Meeting to order. Thanks for coming, everyone. Is there anything to add to the agenda?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Minutes of September 9th, 2019. Everyone get a chance to read them?
Approve as written. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Great job, everyone. Privilege of the floor, number 1. Would anyone like to speak? Hi, Karen.
I have a question. My name is Karen Cloud, for those who don't know. I have a question about the budget. And I don't know whether it applies to this year or next year with the governor signing a compromise budget. And it looks like Plymouth is getting nearly $1 million. So where does that go? To the town, then to the school, and how much to the school, and when? Is
I
it
have
this
Dan
year?
here who can explain this so well.
Is it this year or next?
So it's split over 2 years.
It's over 2.
It's over 2 years, but Dan can speak to where that money goes and how that factors into Plymouth.
So I think what you're talking about is the increased in adequacy
Yes.
aid to the towns. The Plymouth number, which is about $600,000 and change for the current year, is split between the Plymouth School District and the Pemmy-Baker District, and that division is done at the state level. So a portion of that $600,000 this current fiscal year comes into this district, and a portion comes into the high school for Plymouth's portion of the high school expense. It is money that does come directly to the school as a revenue. It's factored, the increased number is used by the Department of Revenue Administration when they're calculating the tax rates that'll be issued this fall. So it doesn't increase the appropriation at all, or the spending threshold, right? The amount that's been approved as a total amount allowed to be spent from a budgetary perspective does not increase that at all. What it will do is it will lower the amount of local taxation.
Okay, so the nearly $1 million
So
that was just
Mhm.
approved. Are you saying the 600,000 is part of that?
Yep. I'm saying I think the number you're referring to is approximately $1.2 million. I don't have the exact numbers.
No, it's like 909 something. It's just under $1 million.
Okay, so I might be off a little bit, but if we're talking about increased adequacy aid, which was a cornerstone of the revised budget, like I said, there's a 2-year number, and excuse me, the Plymouth portion that's targeted, if you will, to the town of Plymouth because it affects the town of Plymouth's tax rate, which has 2 educational components: the Plymouth School District where we are, and the Pemmy-Baker School District that the town of Plymouth is a member of. But so once again, it doesn't increase the authority of spending or the budget. It will be used exclusively to reduce local taxation.
I guess that's not the answer I wanted.
Is there anyone else? All right, principals report.
Well, at Plymouth Elementary School, we are definitely taking advantage of our beautiful autumn this year. We've had students coming and going, mostly around the content area of science. We have the kindergartners are out this week to Beans and Greens. Grade 1 did their annual trip up to Windy Ridge, and I've watched over the years how that is a totally integrated project with science and writing and math, as well as team building. Second grade has included a hike up Rattlesnake Mountain, which I know many of us have always done the Rattlesnake in Holderness, but many of our students don't get an opportunity to do that, and that gives a different perspective. And again, they do tree identification and geology work with that hike as well. Grade 3 has integrated a trip up to Castle in the Clouds in Moultonborough. And again, they were looking at seasonal change, animal adaptation. They're also walking down to the amazing Plymouth State University weather station this week. A big focus is on weather and meteorology. Grade 4 just went up to Lost River and did their glacial erosion weathering New Hampshire geology project. Grade 5 did their metric walk downtown, and they're getting ready to hike up Cardigan Mountain. And again, it's the focus is primarily on the science piece. And then grade 6 was able to create a different kind of trip. They did go out to Star Island, and they did the Black Heritage Trail. Again, the focus was on ecosystems, looking at the rocky shore of New Hampshire, which when you're out on the boat, you can actually see all 18 miles of the New Hampshire coast, which is kind of cool. It's exceptional, so wanted to say thank you to the board and to parents for supporting those trips and really helping students understand that learning goes way beyond the classroom. Other than that, we've been doing assessments and benchmarks. We're planning on sending parent assessment letters home in the next couple of weeks. Progress reports are going home this week. For the middle school, those are digital. And we have our parent-teacher conferences coming up November 5th, which is again a time to have a conversation around those. I have the enrollment. Not much has changed. We're pretty steady at 402. I know that we've been watching the grade 2 classroom, grade 2 classroom, and that's just held steady at 15 in each classroom. I also have hot off the press from our literacy action team, an invitation to one book, one school. We hope we can have as many people involved beyond the school and the community to read, to have a conversation around the book Wish Tree, which is a beautiful book told from the perspective of a red oak. And I'll just leave it at that. It's well worth a read. So we hope people can join us.
Thank you.
Hi.
How are you?
So I'm going to give you a lowdown on a lot of our teams and kind of where they're at right now. So starting with our field hockey team, they're I think about 9 games into the season. We lost a game today because of the weather, but they stand at 8-1, and their only loss comes to Winnisquam. They had some great back-to-back games with them. Played them on a Friday at their place and won 3-2. They came to us on the following Monday and beat us on our home ground. So really good game, and the kids are all playing really well. Younger players, I always enjoy watching the second game and how much they're improving and really coming along in the game. And wanted to make sure that I'd let you know that Coach McManus and Coach Avery are doing a great job balancing playing time of 38 girls out there. So it's been a great season for them so far. Football team, they continue to battle. They're going against some bigger, stronger teams. Unfortunately, right now we've got a few players that are out to injury, but our coaches really continue to highlight a lot of the athletes along the way, and the kids that are really stepping up and improving as some of these injuries are taking place. Most recently, they had a 42-28 loss at Monadnock, but there was a really long ride, 80 degrees that day, and our kids were actually right with them for the entire game, right down until the end, and we just ran out of gas, and they had fresh legs to add. But the kids are doing great, and we're hoping that next week we'll get some of those injured players back. We were fortunate in the timing. We had a bye this weekend, so they got a little bit of extra time to recoup. But again, coaches and kids are doing a great job and hanging tough. All the soccer teams are playing well. It's been fun to see the players really working with each other, some nice connections happening out on the field. 7th and 8th boys and girls have played against teams so far like Kennett, Berlin, Moultonborough, Laconia. The boys stand at 1, 2, and 2, with tie games coming against Kennett and Moultonborough. They split games with Berlin, and even their last loss to Laconia was Laconia capitalizing on 2 penalty kicks. So we got to keep issues out of the box. The 7th and 8th girls played tough as well. They're 1-4, and avenging an earlier loss to Berlin in a 3-2 victory, but have played some tight games too, like with Moultonborough. They were ahead 2-0 and ended up with a 2-3 loss, but again, a great game for the girls. 5 and 6 younger players are 2-2, showing some nice promise for the future there as well. And again, kudos to our soccer coaches, really working hard on developing game skills and overall field awareness with the kids on the soccer field. Volleyball players are showing great improvement as well, beginning to really blend as a team. You can see the difference on the court. They're currently 4-2, winning their last 4 games in a row. Congratulations goes out to Coach Pack, who was married this past weekend, so we gave her a little time off. Our cross-country kids, runners continue to break their own personal records and seem to keep finding their way to the podium when we're at these invitational meets. The girls' team has finished first in 3 races and second in 2 others. The boys' team has captured second place in 3 of their races. And just some notable highlights. Running phenom Nathaniel Gervais, he's one of our 7th graders, has taken first place in every single race he's run this year. So he's doing great. Our girls team had 5 girls in the top 10 at the Kennett Invitational. That was Reagan Sutherland, Kelsey Main, Addie England, Anna Boyer, and Ella Ronci. And they captured first place overall for that invite. And both Nathaniel Gervais and Leo Ebner were also in the top 10, and our boys team took second place overall at Kennett. And Nathaniel broke his own Kennett course record for the 2nd year in a row and broke it by 9 seconds this year. And we just recently hosted our Plymouth Invitational last week. We had 4 girls and 2 boys place in the top 10. The girls were first place and the boys were second place overall as a team. Runners in the top 10 were Reagan Sutherland, Kelsey Main, Addie England, Anna Boyer, Nathaniel Gervais, and Leo Ebner. Once again, Nathaniel set the course record, finished nearly a minute ahead of the next runner coming through. So pretty impressive. But again, great jobs to coaches Kevin Greenler, Geneva Sambor. Really ran a seamless event. We had 12 teams competing, 170 runners, and a lot of spectators around in the area. So the weather held for us. Competition was great, and it was a good afternoon. And thanks again to our parents also. I know we had a lot of folks come in and providing food and drinks and snacks for all of the visiting teams at the end of the race. So it's just kind of a nice touch. So glad we could do that. Appreciate that. Safety updates. You've noticed if you've come in the front entrance, PES has a new look to it for its visitors. Front doors are now locked throughout the school day. Intercom and camera system were added. Visitors now have to push a button which activates a lovely tone in the front office, and the office staff is now able to see and speak with the visitors before they gain access into that front lobby. Front office glass is also now protective glass, as well as protective glass upgrades made to all of those front lobby doors as well. Another piece is we will be having 2 secure key boxes that will be added to 2 different locations on the outside of the school, and that is for Plymouth Police Department for them to have access to the interior of the building. They already all have access to the outside through key fobs, but now they'll be able to have access to interior rooms and can access those through those secure key boxes. Plymouth Fire Department already has a lockbox on the outside of the building, so they're able to do that as well. Other than that, the safety committee's been busy with bus evacuations, fire, secure classroom drills, and we've got a couple of things coming up. Our communication and efforts of, improving protocols and practices we're always working on. So one of the things we'll be doing soon is staff will be receiving both verbal and written review of the eAlerts app on their phone, just kind of a refresher of how we use that, why and when we use that. So that will be good. And the Plymouth Police Department is also looking into, with the eAlerts organization, the possibility of can they link our secure classroom alarm here with the eAlerts app. So they're looking to see, so if that alarm goes off here, can it automatically inform eAlerts? So they are working with them to see if that's a possibility. And right now, it just currently connects to Plymouth Dispatch, which still is, great response, but we want to see if we can reach it further. So, and that is it. Thank you.
Claims and payroll. Have to sign. Is there any correspondence?
I do not have any correspondence.
Okey-dokey. Happy to have John Francis here to discuss our energy audit review. So thank you for coming.
So as you recall, last year we talked about doing this energy audit, which has now been complete, and I'm going to be sending out a spreadsheet to you guys tonight. On that spreadsheet, you're going to see several different areas that we looked at. You'll see what the costs of those are, and what the payback of those are. And it involved everything from wood to solar. You will not see solar on there. I pulled it. There's really no easy location on the structure or on the grounds to do it. And I don't want to put it on the roof because we have had instances where we do need to get the snow off of the roof because of load conditions, and that will hinder that. So as far as solar is concerned, it's really not a viable option here. Our ground locations aren't suitable for where we need to get at the sun. So Mike from EEI is here tonight. They're the ones who performed the audit. I'll have Mike speak to this document.
I think there's two there, Dan. I think there's two.
So I'm Mike Davey with EEI, and just to give you a quick refresher, about 4 years ago we started doing the energy audit process at the regional high school. And at that time we looked at doing propane or wood heat as the primary source to get off of oil, and we also looked at replacing the lights with LED and installing more energy efficient transformers. We did that project, I think in the summer of 2016. We put in a wood chip boiler on the north side of the high school, which if you haven't seen is pretty neat. So the school, about 90% of the heating needs in the school are now wood, which is a renewable resource. And then we were able to successfully, through lighting and controls and transformer upgrades, bring the electricity bill down by about 40% per year through these energy efficiency projects. And there's reduced maintenance as well, because fluorescent lights tend to last 5 or 6 years, whereas LED lights have an estimated 20-year life in the classroom environment. So we did that comprehensive study at the high school. That project has been completed and they've been reaping the benefits. And we wanted to then start with the elementary schools, and we've been working with John on looking at options for Plymouth Elementary. And I want to point out, this is a preliminary document, and what we're seeking from the board is not a yes or no on the overall idea, but an idea of which of these projects make sense to further study. With the typical process is these projects are funded in one of two ways. One is doing them in the budget, which is typically over time. And one of the schools we work with is the Chesterfield Elementary School. And what they did is we did a report like this for them, and then every year they kind of take one item and put it in the budget. And over 7 years, we've been able to complete everything. The more typical way is funding through a lease or a bond, where the energy savings really help or completely pay for the improvements over time. And that's what we did at the high school. So we obtained a lease for more than 15 years, which is paid off in large part from the energy savings at the school. So the first three items are related to, which I have labeled 1A, B, and C. 1A is to replace the existing oil boilers with high efficiency propane boilers. These would be similar to the high efficiency propane boilers at the high school that heat the building when the wood is not being used. Then 1B is $900,000, and it is a wood chip boiler that would have 95% of the school's heat use the same wood chips as the high school. What makes this a little more challenging than the high school is that we haven't found sufficient space in the school with the current layout to locate the wood chip boiler. They're fairly substantial in the school, so we've included a small addition in this budget to house a wood chip boiler. And then the last option, which is 1C regarding the boilers, would be to convert convert the existing oil boilers, which we estimate have about 9 years of useful life remaining on them. We can convert those to propane, and the savings would be $15,000. And the benefit of that to the campus is that then the campus would be entirely propane, meaning the high school and the elementary for fossil fuel. It's generally more efficient to burn, and oil tends to be more costly to maintain. There's buried oil tanks that have to be inspected annually, there's monitoring fees, and then they're fairly expensive to remove. So we have 3 separate options on the boilers, and I just want to be clear, these are options, so they're not additive. You'd either do A, B, or C. And the payback ranges from 10 years to 30 years. One of the things that helped us with biomass at the high school to make the case for that is that we were able to go out. We had a clear feeling that wood should be strongly considered for that high school from the board. And so we were able to find more grants to bring the cost down of the overall project. So it's not inconceivable that if this board felt strongly about wood, we could investigate that further. But the automatic rebate from the state would be about $60,000, and then there are some competitive grants we may be able to go for in October. Then LED lighting. This is all new LED fixtures, which would be similar but actually better than the products that we've installed in the high school, because over 4 years the technology has gotten even better than it was when we did that project. We've included some insulation at the roof wall joint with spray foam, which is about $15,000. Some controls and analytics improvements, which would continue to monitor and look for more efficiencies in the system, and replacing the 3 electrical transformers in the school for $30,000. And so we then broke it down into three options, saying if you were to do items 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then combine that with either 1A, 1B, or 1C, what it would look like in aggregate. So option 1, the biomass project would be $1.2 million with $48,800 in energy savings, $125,000 in rebates, with an estimated payback of 21 years. Then we looked at conversion of the propane, which is the lowest cost at under $500,000. Energy savings of just under $40,000 and $65,000 in rebates. And lastly, new high-efficiency propane boilers, which is $697,000, $40,300 in rebate in savings. And so that's the savings you would reap each year. And the paybacks again range from 10 years to 21 years, depending on which option that you pick. And the way these would typically be funded, like I had mentioned before, is either A, sort of picking this and budgeting it, or maybe when extra money comes in from the state, I don't know. But the more typical way is with a long-term lease. And the idea, for example, if you did option 2, it's a 10-year payback. You would probably attain a bond or a lease for about 13 years, because the interest extends the payback a little bit, the interest on the rate. So this is simple payback if you paid it for it in cash. If you include an interest cost, it tends to add a few years to the payback. So that's from a big summary. And I think the biggest question for the board is A, does it make sense to continue to explore this toward a potential either budget or warrant article solution? And if so, should biomass be looked at further and grants applied for, or does that not make sense for this facility?
So I know you guys are all thinking, okay, John, where are we going? So, I mean, to me, anything under 10 years is an absolute no-brainer for us. So to me, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are, that to me, that's, we should move on that. And I think that we do it, I would suggest more as a lease, because it keeps us net neutral on our taxes. And that, I think the taxpayers would be happy to know that we pay for this through the savings that it generates. So out of 1, A, B, or C, if we were to lean towards any one of those, I'd be leaning more towards new high-efficiency propane boilers. The downside that we have is in 2009 and 2010, I mean, we hit the building hard as far as energy back then, and we reaped some really good rewards of that. For instance, our fuel consumptions back then were ranging between 38 and 42,000 gallons a year. Since that time, we're ranging between, depending on the cold season, between 14 and 17,000 gallons a year, depending on what the ambient temperature is outside for any given year.
Say that again,
So,
down to 14 to 17?
14 and 17. So, I mean, it was a substantial savings there. We also implemented a lot of drives and CO2 controls in the building, which I think we average around 3,000 kilowatt savings a month back then. So it hurts the payback on a wood boiler. So 30 years, that's a long time. I mean, you're talking the life of the equipment. So and a lot of that is like Mike said, I don't have room in the existing building, so that would mean more than likely where our outbuilding is down back, where Park and Rec and gym storage, that area, we'd probably either adding something onto that area and a silo in that area to put the wood boiler there. At the time we did renovate the school, I did put in, the piping is in play to accept some outside source of heat in hopes that someday that we could do. So the building's ready to accept it. It's that outside cost of doing the project. So I guess a little bit of direction for you guys and what you guys' thoughts are and questions as to.
Just for, what are you using for a lifespan for existing heating system? You mentioned there's probably 9 years left.
Yeah, I would say between 9 and 14, somewhere in that realm.
What's the total lifespan of that though?
Yeah, 20 to 25.
Okay. So maybe half of its life left.
Yeah. Yep.
Or a little less.
Yep. And they're not giving us any issues. I mean, they run fine. They're good, strong Madeira's boilers. We invested in decent equipment. I don't feel truly comfortable with conversion on them. I mean, yes, we can, but the savings in the propane boilers really come in condensing boilers, and that's in our post and pre-season where we can run temperatures of 120 degrees, make water at 120 degrees as opposed to making 180 degree water and then splitting it off with mixing valves. So that's where the big savings in these boilers come in, is in our post and pre-season. We don't need to expend those BTUs.
Do you happen to know what we're paying for propane and oil? I know that
So
oil,
right
oil is fairly consistent. Propane is variable based on the size.
Last year we were at $2.89 a gallon.
Yeah.
I think this year I'm at $2.35 a gallon.
What about
And
long-term
propane,
contracts?
right now
for propane?
our propane lock, I've got a 3-year lock on propane at $1.35.
That matters.
So just over the last 10 years, propane in commercial bulk purchasing, about 9 of the 10 years has significantly beat oil. That doesn't apply to residential or to your grill or anything, but in bulk commercial sales, propane has been the way to go.
Yeah. In our last contract, we were at $1. I've had $1.12 and I've had $1.22. So, and I have 1 year left on the contract that I now have for propane. So,
And you said that these energy savings dollars are per year
Yep.
savings.
yep.
And so typically if the projects are bundled and it's let's say a warrant article, typically the energy savings, you show what the estimated bond release payment is, and then it's mostly or sometimes fully offset by the energy savings. It depends on how long you want to finance it.
Do you need a decision or a recommendation tonight? Or
Can I just say, the one thing is there's a special grant for biomass that comes out in October, that's what made the high school project. So the only decision I would need tonight is if there's any interest in the biomass to try and design that further. And then just that you want us to continue working toward. If not the biomass, then I guess the new propane and the other three, if we should just continue to study. So there's no cost implication, but if you wanted something for this budget season, we would need to do the design in October.
Would the biomass system supplement our existing oil? Would we leave the existing oil in place
That would
as a
be,
backup?
yeah, I think that's how we have it laid out.
Yeah.
So,
But that's the one that you're saying that you have to build a silo.
On the other
and
side.
You're not,
correct.
yeah,
That would be the 1B.
yeah.
And you said that's got a 30-year life, that equipment?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, and then you're getting into some significant maintenance on them, so.
Okay.
And we'd still be looking in 9 to 14 years replacing the oil boilers
With that,
too.
yes.
with-
Right.
with
Yep.
that.
I would say no for the biomass based on all that,
Yeah.
personally.
If the payback period is
It's-
close to the lifespan of the equipment, it's not guaranteed to save anything.
And then replacing,
Replacing the
Yeah,
boilers
on top of
We're
it,
gonna get
yeah.
hit with
My,
another bill.
based on the estimated lifespan of the oil units that would be converted and the fairly high cost to do that, I still think, I think John's recommendation of new condensing propane units would probably be the most cost-effective way to go.
Just to be clear, that you're recommending 1A, is that right, or 1C?
1A.
1A.
Which is
1C is taking our existing boilers
And converting to
and
propane.
converting them to propane.
Okay.
And then I would support installing options 2 through 5.
Yes. Yeah.
Which would put us into option 3 for the total cost, right?
That's correct.
That would be my thought as well.
Yeah.
I think what's not shown here is that in 10 years, we'd be looking at replacing the oil boilers anyway.
Right.
Whereas,
And I could put that cost together as a deferred cost.
Right.
So you could see what that is in 10 years. You can see what that number looks like. If that helps.
Yeah, it probably would if you wouldn't mind, if it's not too much trouble.
Yeah, I
I'd
think-
be curious to see what it looks like.
So I mean, to me, I think I take that option 3, we refine that, and then come back with also deferred, what is our deferred maintenance cost on those boilers? What does that look like in 10 years? So we will be coming back to you, or I will be coming back to you guys with a 10-year CIP, so you can begin to look and forecast what are the things that we're looking at that I see for the next 10 years as things needing to be done, capital facilities-wise. So it's something that we're doing for all the schools. We're working in conjunction with the town so that we can begin to balance each other as to what are the projects that they have opposed to some of the things that we have coming down the pike. So,
Cool.
John, I have one other question. If this converting to these high-efficiency propane boilers, why do we still need the oil?
no, I won't. We'll get rid of it. Part of that number is pulling the oil tank. It goes away, and our propane tank farm would probably be relocated in the same, we'll utilize that same hole while it's open is the plan.
Okay.
So.
what's
that
significantly
oil
less
would-
risk?
Yeah.
Propane tanks are far less risky.
Yeah.
We've had good success with that type of installation. We've done it at the high school. I did do a conversion at Holderness, and it did save money, but the boilers don't perform as well as they could. They're an older boiler, and just those old cast irons, they're just not meant for that. They work, but I think we could do much better with high efficiency. And the other conversion was Waterville Valley, and that was another one that was a home run out of the plate. I mean, they burn less fuel, less propane than they did oil. So, and usually it's approximately average a third more in gallonage. So that worked out really well.
Is there any grant money to do option 1A? Like he was saying that there are special grants specifically for 1B, but is there for 1A?
The New Hampshire Co-op has some rebates for high-efficiency propane boilers that we'll apply for and see how much we can get that.
And these potential rebates are not guaranteed rebates. These are what the most you could get, or
They're proposed.
proposed?
Yeah,
Okay.
and once we decide which direction we're going in, then we get a lot more refined, even with, you know, talking with the co-op. I deal a lot with Joe with the co-op on what rebates are available, and what that will look like for us.
Okay.
Are the thermal recs, that's an annual credit, and is that a guaranteed rate or is that a variable?
It's
Are
variable based on how much you burn.
Right.
And that only applies if you do wood chip
Yep.
Not pellet?
or pellet, any wood.
We do have programs at the high school,
Yeah.
and Dan can speak to what he sells those recs for us at the high school.
We're currently under contract to sell the thermal recs that are generated at the high school. There's something called an APC, or alternative, ACP, excuse me, which stands for Alternative Compliance Payment. So utilities are forced to produce a certain amount of green energy, if you will.
Yeah.
And if they don't buy thermal recs to offset, they have this thing called an alternative compliance payment. We sell our thermal recs from the high school at 85% of the ACP, and we're under a multi-year contract to sell those. This
It
year.
offsets our costs. It's a plus.
It's variable, and
Yep.
as with, at least with solar recs, the market for those has really fallen out, but it depends on the legislature's position on the renewable portfolio standards, so. we have
Market
to kind of-
saturation.
It can change.
Yep.
That's my only concern.
Yep. Yep.
And the potential rebates on the biomass, is that the PUC biomass rebate?
And the high school received a $340,000 grant for their wood chip.
Yep.
from
And
the
plus,
PUC.
we had co-op rebates on projects as well, that we did very well with the co-op. They were a great partner in helping us.
My only comment with regards to LED lighting, I would support that, but the potential rebates on that, if we don't take advantage of that in the next few years, those rebates may be going away as lighting standards are adopted and LEDs become kind of the standard. So if we're looking to offset the cost of those, it's probably better to do that sooner than later. Although the costs keep coming down a little bit too, so it's.
And the technology is even better. I
It
mean,
is.
what these fixtures can do, or these fixtures that we'll be putting in here will do, would have been awesome to have it at the high school. I mean, but nonetheless, it's still,
Yeah,
yep,
makes a lot of sense.
yep. All right, so we'll come back with the rest of the story next time. Okay.
Thank you very much. Employment references and verification.
So we reviewed this last month, and there was a clarification regarding D, I think, and I sent out their resource to you from New Hampshire, or the U.S. Department of Ed. And basically, we were talking about the 4-year time span, I think, is, you know, why was it 4 years? Well, it was dictated to us from the U.S. Department of Ed.
Yeah.
So it's right in the law that's there. So that's just, it's basically regurgitated into the policy.
That's a good reason. Because the
Because
government
we
says
have
so.
to.
Well, I don't know if it's a reason.
And then I just tweaked the
Well, okay.
wording a little bit in D, because it was a
Someone
little
said we
bit
had to.
confusing.
It might not be a good reason, but it's
It
mandated.
is part of the
So,
law.
So.
So typically, sometimes you do a third reading, or if you're comfortable with it now, you can approve it.
I would move that we approve the
I have another question on it.
employment references and verification as written.
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
On D, where it says construction, it says nothing shall be construed to prevent a state from adopting a more stringent policy. What, I guess my question would be, what is that? Therefore, if we as a board decide that we need more
If you want to
regulation?
exceed the what they're requiring, then you may do so.
This is minimum, wouldn't dictate it.
But this is
Gotcha.
what's minimum, what you have to pass.
And you can do that, it mentions a state educational agency or local educational agency.
And you're the
That's
local, you're the
we're
LEA,
Local
yep.
educational agency. I guess my question is, as far as reporting, what the school's required to do versus what we talked about before with, I'd want to know the definition of properly reported to a law enforcement agency, properly reported to other authorities as required by federal, state, or local law. Like how to, I'm assuming there's guidelines and
We already
determinations
have
for
laws
that.
that
You do.
tell us how quickly we have to report any sexual misconduct or anything like that. And it's immediately, as far as that piece goes, to the Department of Ed and to police in this regard.
Okay.
But that's separate than giving a reference on somebody who's, there's an allegation against.
Yep. But that does affect whether you can give a recommendation for someone who there's an allegation against. That's what this says, this
Yeah.
ESEA section 8546.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm fine with it then. Phil, did you want to move this?
Yeah,
Okay.
I did, and I can reiterate.
You're going to move it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move that we accept, that we approve the employment references and verification policy as presented.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We talked about some school board priorities. Kyla gave us a list of some suggestions at our last meeting. I came up with a few off the cuff. So I'll present them to you and see what you guys think. I think that it's important for the school board to keep in mind the budget for not only the school, but also for the taxpayer, and to make sure that we're cognizant that we are looking at both sides to make sure that we're not essentially overspending and keeping in mind the tax rate of Plymouth, New Hampshire. So that's, you know, priority for me. And then Phil, you had some.
My thought on this topic, the only thing I could really come to is I think we do a really good job of recognizing achievement, and I think my recommendation would be to work on identifying achievement at all levels within the school, sort of recognizing student achievement at all levels.
Grade levels you're talking about?
Not necessarily grade levels, but within grade levels, there's you know, I think sometimes standout students get recognition, and I think that it's good to recognize progress
In everyone.
within the spectrum of learning within a grade level.
So to
I
recognize-
think it's more of a broad spectrum appreciation of progress by all students.
To recognize growth and achievement
Yeah.
for all students.
Well put.
Yeah, that's a very succinct way of getting at it.
Yeah, it sounded a lot better when you said it.
I put the whole thing in. Then the other one, just to shorten
Make it
that
succinct.
piece, to be cognizant of budget and the tax rate. And anything
Impact
else
on
in
the
regards to that piece, or no?
No.
That's good.
Something. Do you guys have anything would you like to add?
Not at the moment. How's that?
All right.
Kelly, you have some
I like these.
profound thing.
Profound? No.
Do you need us to just speak those to you?
No, that's it.
Okay.
That's good.
Perfect, thank you. Any other business?
The only other business I would like to say is thank you to, we had as you know, we had an accidental push of the panic button a few weeks ago, and the response from folks in the building, teachers, assistants, administrators, and law enforcement was unbelievable. And we're really lucky to be in this community, because I think that we had a great response. I think there were several departments here, and they have helped us debrief and kind of look at our policies and procedures. They're doing the same, but it couldn't have happened at a worse time. It was right at the start, before kids were getting here, so there were parents, it was the best time to practice something like that and to learn from something, but the worst time in the moment, I guess I would say, because it really showed, as a campus, what we need to tweak to do a little better, especially traffic flow and whatnot inside the buildings, and it was a great appreciation for the response that we had. Our system works, so it was great.
The few teachers and paras that I spoke to about the event mentioned that, you know, some of the kids were outside, and it sounded like everybody did a great job of adapting the fundamentals of what you know about emergency response to their situation, even if it wasn't specifically laid out in a plan. It sounds like everybody adapted really well and gathered kids and got them into secure areas where they're, you know, in a good position to be in. So.
Well, it's amazing too, because teachers in the moment that were just arriving were unbelievable.
Really
so you can see really teachers in their practice shine as far as making kids feel safe, and they didn't know what was going on either, so it was great.
Thinking on your feet.
Yes,
it
was.
But that's good though, right? If something really happens, it's going to be some chaos, no matter when it happens.
It's going to be chaotic
so having
no matter
that,
what.
I mean, this is
Emergencies aren't
really
perfect.
a pretty good opportunity. You made lemonade out of whatever, lemon. Hey, this wasn't planned, but we learned some lessons. Response was appropriate. Now we just need to tweak some things. And no matter how much you practice that kind of stuff, when it really happens, if it really happens, it's messy and chaotic.
Yeah.
But this was a nice dry run, it sounds like, so kudos to
And
the
having
staff and everybody.
our SRO here, Officer Jill, she was here, she ran right over from the high school. She was the first officer on the scene, so
Awesome.
that was helpful to have her here as well. So, well done.
It's a good drill.
Yeah, good drill.
Really, you planned it, right? It was all by design, and you're saying it was an accident.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Carla.
Yep.
Privilege of the floor, number 2.
Down this time. I'm here tonight to speak about a deficit in individualized academic support services for struggling students at Plymouth Elementary School in the primary wing. Plymouth Elementary School is currently pursuing rigorous Tier 1 classroom instruction. However, research studies estimate that 20% of students will fall behind because they're not adequately served by quality Tier 1 classroom instruction. The research also states that to get a struggling Tier 2 child back to Tier 1 success, they often need 15 to 30 minutes of targeted intervention daily. Especially in the primary wing, it's impossible for teachers to spend the necessary time providing research-based targeted interventions each day with the struggling students. Primary wing teachers are constantly dealing with behavioral issues in the classroom and very short student attention spans. This leaves an estimated 20% of the student body in the primary wing without the intervention services they require to meet grade level expectations. Plymouth Elementary is a Title I school. The PES Title I handbook, which is right here, states PES will have a Title I teacher. This teacher will, in collaboration with the data team, review assessments to determine the interventions to be used with targeted students. 5 times a year, there will be monitoring of targeted students, which will review if the intervention worked or what intervention should be used next for student academic success. Currently, Plymouth is not following through with this plan in the primary wing. There are no teachers with the time to monitor students. assess progress, develop comprehensive intervention plans, provide one-on-one small group interventions, and do follow-up assessments. Every other school in this SAU has either a reading specialist or a Title I interventionist. When Plymouth Elementary School opened its doors, there were 3 reading specialists. Several years ago, they had a reading specialist for a year, and I've heard from several people that she was extremely beneficial to Plymouth and its students. It's my understanding the primary teachers would unanimously support hiring a reading specialist now. Plymouth Elementary is often referred to as the flagship elementary school in the SAU. It's true that Plymouth Elementary School offers certain specials that other schools in the SAU do not offer. However, we can't leave behind the children that are struggling to read and do basic math in order to offer these extra classes to children that are already succeeding. I believe that's wrong. It's inexcusable that we are leaving more than 20% of the students behind, often the low socioeconomic status children. We might say we're focusing on small class sizes, but we have larger class sizes than the other schools in the SAU, like Romney, Ashland, Wentworth, and Campton. And those schools have a reading specialist and/or an interventionist as well. I understand that money is always an issue. However, in my opinion, it's to our detriment as a school, community, and society to leave behind this large group of underserved students. They deserve the opportunity to thrive. I've had several meetings with Principal Julie Flynn and Assistant Superintendent Kyla Welch. During those meetings, the message I've heard is that Plymouth Elementary School would greatly benefit from a reading specialist. A reading specialist can provide evidence-based one-on-one or small group interventions for struggling students. They can also coordinate the testing and assessment data that's collected on students. They can evaluate the data on a large scale and for individual students, helping to identify the ones that are struggling. A reading specialist can also provide training for the aides, paraprofessionals, and teachers on evidence-based interventions to use in the classroom. Finally, a reading specialist could offer services to children that are gifted and need more of a challenge academically. It's my understanding that they sometimes serve in this capacity. I would propose that a reading specialist be hired immediately to serve the primary wing, and perhaps the money that was set aside last year in the budget to hire a third, second grade teacher can be used to hire the reading specialist now. At the very least, a reading specialist needs to be hired for the 2020-2021 academic year. Thank you.
Meredith?
Yeah.
Why just the primary wing are you focusing on?
It would be great to have a reading specialist for the whole school, but I think that the primary wing, from what I have gathered, the intermediate wing and the middle school wing are kind of the teachers kind of share students. So if there's a group of students that needs more intensive math help, it's my understanding that they go with a certain teacher to get that help. But they can't really do that in the primary wing because students are, the students don't do well with the transitions, and it just doesn't really work with the little kids.
So if I'm just schedule-wise, grades 3 through 8 have time in their day for response to intervention, time where the teachers can, the 3 third grade teachers, for example, will take, Mr. Southworth will take some students and they'll divvy them up that way. Whereas in the primary grade, they don't have that structure in place.
So I appreciate your thoughts. The money, as far as hiring a reading specialist for this year, is not going to happen because the funds that we've had for that third, second grade teacher have been used already for extra para educators, from what I understand, for special education. So there is no more money in the budget this year whatsoever at all for anything additional. We certainly can take into consideration adding it to the budget for next year, but we also have to understand that that money needs to come from somewhere. So it's, something else is going to have to be cut in order to have that position. So just keep that in mind, that if there's something next year, if we decide to put it in the budget and it's voted on and we lose something else, just be mindful that we had to lose that in order to get this. So we certainly will take it into consideration for the budget for next year, but this year there's just no money.
Yeah, and I think, if I can for a second, a reading specialist is helpful, and I think we talked about that as well. But with, like I said, in Plymouth, there's other additional staff too, whether, you know, specials or other pieces that are added in there. So like we said, I think the board will be looking at, okay, if we're gonna go with the reading specialist, what are we gonna take, or what's gonna, because the appropriations, I think with the loss of revenue that we have moving forward, and to be mindful of the tax rate, I think that's, well, we're gonna have to be creative, and I think the board will have to be creative, but it sounds like the reading specialist is important, and if it's something that is, you know, that we're gonna move forward with, then definitely it would be shifting a little bit as well.
So what do you do other years when, you know, you get new students in who need special education services and you don't have that money already set aside in the budget?
So because we're mandated to provide service, so it's a bottom line budget, so we use what's in there. So whether it's occupational therapy, if they're out of district, whatever this special ed needs are, and it's preschool through 8th grade, it's just, we're required to pay for it and find the funds. If the district doesn't have the funds, I don't know if you want to talk about if there isn't the funds in the budget for special ed, what we do for that piece.
Well, there's two options. You can either cut existing programs to fund the requirements, the legal requirements. Occasionally, we've had districts go into something called a deficit position, which requires a warrant article to raise additional funds the following year, but it gives the school district the authority to collect the cash, if you will, from the town in the present year. It's I would call it a last resort option. The most common way of dealing with unanticipated special ed costs is to cut existing programs.
How does that square with the earlier point about additional incoming funds?
Yeah.
So the conversation earlier had to do with the state budget, which provided for increased adequacy funds. And there's two sides to every budget. There's the expense side and the revenue side. And the appropriation, or the spending authority, as I sometimes refer to it, is what's set by the legislative body, by the public at the polls in March, or at your town meeting or your district meeting. And that provides the total amount that the district is allowed to spend. There's revenues that are estimated when a budget is approved by the public in March. Those revenues are updated to the state, what's called the Department of Revenue Administration, in September. And those revenues are applied to the total spending authority that was approved in March, and the difference is what's raised in local taxation and the tax rate that's set by the Department of Revenue Administration. And for each town, Plymouth, you can collect this much in local taxes. The adequacy aid that we talked about earlier is a revenue that's going to be more than was anticipated. That being said, the budget, the approved spending authority, the appropriation, does not change. So the net result of the increased revenue we talked about, and there are other types of revenue that may increase or decrease. I'll give you one example. Is we're now anticipating a decrease in Medicaid revenue because of some changes at the Department of Human Services. The point being is that the revenue changes. We estimate it again in September, after first in March, then in September, and the net is what's raised in local taxation. But once again, the spending authority, or the appropriation, only happens once a year. That happens in March. So if the number is $8 million in round terms for this school district for the current fiscal year, that's what can be spent. And different revenues will change the amount to be raised in local taxation for homeowners and property owners, but it won't change the spending authority that the district has.
So is Plymouth Elementary School not held to follow this document?
Do you want to talk about do you have the grant?
I can talk about what's in the Title I grant, what the Title I grant for this current year, what the grant application that's approved is being spent on this year. I can't speak to the Title I plan that you held up. But I can tell you that this year in the Title I grant, approximately $90,000 is being spent on salaries and benefits for regular ed teachers for support services. Approximately $10,000 in supplies and resources for the regular education programs. $25,000 in support of guidance activities for the more challenged part of our student population, and approximately $3,000 is mandated as what's called a homeless set-aside to pay for supplies and other materials that might be needed for homeless students.
Yes, Karen.
So that makes me think about, Dan, the 90,000 spent for salary for support services. Can you tell us what that is? Support services at what grade levels?
It doesn't go into grade level. It's for one full-time teacher in this building who's providing academic support to students.
I guess that puzzles me. I work here and I'm trying to think of like who that could be. What position is that? I don't need a name, but a support service person?
So you're aware that the budgets are broken out into different functional areas. 1,100 is and this is a state mandated numbering system, so please forgive my techno-babble. But 1,100 is regular education, for example. 1,200 is special education. 20 would be guidance, or what have you. This is at 1,100, so a teacher that is contract for regular education, because one thing that's important with Title I, for example, is that it has to be supplemental expenses, you can't be supplanting existing budgeted purposes. So you can never use Title I funds, for example, for a special education purpose, because special ed is mandated by law. So it would never be a supplemental special ed cost, it would be a mandated special ed cost.
So this is a regular ed teacher in our building at some grade level. I just don't know.
I don't know that I don't know, I don't have the data in front of me to tell you whether it's a specific grade level or someone who serves multiple grade levels. I don't have that data in front of me.
I guess I'm just not aware of anybody in my wing, K-1-2, K-1-2, including preschool, that
their contract wouldn't.
providing academic
The
services.
contract doesn't say that your contract is funded by a grant. So it's really not I don't see that it's a.
I guess it sounds like support services, so who's getting the support?
That's my terminology. I'm not using that in an educational sense. I'm saying that the school district is receiving $90,000 in support from Title I
Using
to
Title I
fund
money.
a regular education teacher or
So
teachers.
that could be for a classroom.
Right.
Does anyone have anything else to say?
So we have a new project manager in the SAU, so I will definitely have her take a look at it. Our Title I, our new assistant superintendent oversees Title I, so I will definitely have her take a look at that, because it shouldn't be up there if it's not specific to that piece. So I just want to make sure the plan is succinct with the grant. It's basically what we need to make sure. The grant is already approved, though. But we'll take a look at that, definitely.
All right, thank you.
So I was very excited to write a letter to the school board last month and have it read, even though I couldn't be here. But it was about the idea of capital reserves and how important they are, because in 10 years, we're going to need to redo the roof again, and it's going to cost probably at least $100,000 in 10-year spending. So if we save $10,000 a year, it will not hurt the tax rate as much as a big whammy of $100,000. So I would like to know what, because I wasn't here at that last meeting, what needs to be done going forward Is it just me bringing it up at every meeting, or, which I'm happy to do, or is there something that needs to be done to make sure that it gets put in as, I'm assuming, a warrant article for the budget, so that we have, I would assume, $10,000 of capital reserve spending going into a capital reserve account for the roof?
We did receive public input last month, I think, from a couple of folks that suggested the same piece.
Yeah.
So that's something I think the board said they would consider as they develop the budget as well, as far as, is it something, I don't know if you want to.
I just have, if we do it and earmark it specifically for the roof, does it have to be a warrant article? Do you know?
So my recommendation, you have a facilities improvement capital reserve fund.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of years, you've taken money out of it for some portable classroom walls, for example, 60,000. I believe, one thing I go away from memory, 2 years ago it was 60,000 out of capital reserve. This year was 60,000 raised through taxation. Point being is the capital reserve has already been established, so you have a number of different avenues you could take to put money into that. It would definitely require a vote of the legislative body, your district meeting. You could do a affirmative article saying, yes, we're absolutely going to raise this money, put it into capital reserve, and that gets a vote, yes or no. You could do a contingent article, meaning if we have a fund balance at the end of the year, that money would go into the capital reserve. And the final option is a petition article could come from the public with a proper number of signatures, and that would automatically go on the warrant if a petition article came from the public.
Okay.
Part of our decision on funding a capital reserve for a building maintenance would probably hinge on the capital improvement plan, and I believe John Francis mentioned that he was preparing one for us, a 10-year. So if we can, that kind of gives us an idea of what we anticipate for costs in the next 10 years, and if we kind of split those costs out and set that money into, a reserve account in each budget year as we can, that would get us there. Although I will bring up something I hadn't really considered in the past that Mark Halloran mentioned. In general, if you're creating a capital reserve, you're setting money aside and it sits in an account and it doesn't really do a whole lot, and you kind of lose, there's probably some kind of interest on those accounts, but it's not much. And the alternative is when you bond something, you pay interest on it. The question is, who benefits from the improvement? And generally it's the people in school after it's installed. So he made the argument that, the parents paying a bond are the ones that are benefiting, or the community paying the bond is in alignment with the period of time when the payment is benefiting the school. So there's something to be said in terms of bonding. I mean, we can put money in a capital reserve, and I think it makes sense to do both at times. Put some out so you have a capital reserve ready. I think we have the discretion to spend from that as needed, if I recall correctly. Or no,
you need approval of the legislative body.
Okay. But I think there are two sides to big projects. Save up and people pay for it for years in advance, or bond it and pay for it after.
Yeah, I believe I had spoken with him about it as well, and he had
Either way.
said that was the reason why we stopped using as many capital reserves for the school program, was that mindset. I would say that while, yes, people are going to be paying for it now, it's something where in 10 years, I'm still going to be benefiting, my kids will still be here, but just on the edge. But it's still something that, as a town, it will still benefit the town.
Right.
And I think that's an important distinction between, yes, who is actually going to benefit from it, like the kids today who are paying for it versus the kids of the future who are the ones who are going to be receiving the benefit. But I think that it's something that is important enough that that I was going to bring it up again. So at this point, I don't need, it's like something that's on the docket. I don't need to stand up here every time.
We love it if you
I
stand
would love to. I have no problem.
But yes, we
Capital love, but I just want to make sure that you understand that it's important.
Yes.
So.
It's nothing we'll have the ability to do anything until we draft a budget.
Right, until the budget. I didn't know the timeline. When I talked to Halloran last year, he said the fall. So here I am.
Yeah, we'll be reviewing the capital improvement list within the next 2 months, and the budget will come out November, December. It's the first draft.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, why don't you pass those out right now? Okay. We brought you a handout, and we don't usually. We're here, Mary and I are here representing Got Lunch. We have children who graduated from Plymouth Elementary School many years ago. I was employed here. Mary was in other area schools. Got literacy represented here. We're in favor, but we're here to talk about food, Got Lunch, and keeping kids ready to learn. So Mary and I have worked on the Got Lunch program for the last 7 years. Plymouth has had a summer child feeding program for those who request it for that period of time. We don't want to go very long tonight, except to let you know that the basic format of the program persists. The emphasis is on quality food. And if you didn't know that we are giving coupons that are collectible at the local farm stand, and the emphasis on nutrition really shows when kids learn more about picking their own vegetables. So fruit gets delivered with their bag every week. They prepare the food as they like it. The supplies are there for whenever they need them and to be used as they like them. And then they have the opportunity to pick up dairy downtown at the convenience store with a coupon from us, and also vegetables. I think most of you are familiar with the program. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So we've got the choir, and
I just would like to thank Kelly and Julie especially for their support of the program. They help us get the registration forms to the parents, and they have put an online registration form on the school's website, and it's huge. So thank you very much.
we have other people to thank too. It's just amazing when you've got a smooth running operation. And so you've got secretaries in the office, they keep the registrations and the tote bags straight, you know, in two separate piles. And, you know, the nurse is a great backup. The guidance counselor does their piece. Individual classroom teachers have been known to really hang in there and refer students when things get a little spacey and the forms don't come back quite as fast as we'd like to see. So, the data.
Again, it was 100 children in 57 families that we served this year, all Plymouth residents. And it's amazing, and thank you again for your support.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to return to go into non-public session. Thank you, everyone, for coming.